Welcome back to the Boys in the Booth podcast, episode 223. Cody Abrams, Melbourne, with you for this one. And hard to believe we are already into the month of December. Christmas is right around the corner. World Juniors, Four Nations face-off rosters coming. All of the exciting stuff on the way. Looking forward to all of that, and looking forward to another episode with you guys. So let's get right into it with Core 4 stories. And fellas, we have a couple of trades to talk about that happened over the weekend. And let's start with the big one involving the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets. The David Jiricek saga, if you will, is now over. Jiricek is a member of the Minnesota Wild. He goes to Mini with a 5th-round pick from Columbus. In exchange, the Jackets receiving defenseman Damon Hunt, a 1st, a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 4th in this deal. Thoughts?
I heard a lot of people blowing up about this, saying, Chad, for example, saying to Corey, what are the Blue Jackets doing? But I don't know if I blame them here fully. I think that this trade is like a win-win fine. Win-win for Minnesota and David Jiricek, and a fine for Columbus, because frankly, Jiricek has struggled at the NHL level when he is on the NHL club. He's been great at the pro level. He's been great in the World Juniors, at the World Championships, everything else. He's been fantastic. A lot of people talking about his foot speed and a couple other issues. And then the fact that he doesn't want to be on the Columbus Blue Jackets anymore. Him and his agent were upset about him being sent back down to the AHL, even though he had like a terrible camp and a rough start to the season. So when you're in a circumstance like this, and you're a team like Columbus that has just the cupboards full on defense. They drafted 4 defense last year. They have Matejchuk, who they drafted in the same year as Jiricek. They have Honzik, they have Svozil, they have Corson Kuhlmans, and now get a defenseman in return for Jiricek as well. I can understand where they think that they're in the position to trade Jiricek. I think Minnesota is going to be laughing to the bank with the deal in the long run. They have a history of turning players into strong defensemen, and I think they'll do the same thing with Jiricek, and that's why it's a win for him. The reason why I say it's fine for Columbus is, why are they not getting a player, like a ready now player in this trade? Mm-hmm. Because right now they're currently sitting in a playoff spot. They have been playing fantastic this year. They kind of seem like they're starting to turn the corner on the rebuild here. Why are you getting picks for the future when you have the best prospect pool in the league and you're in a playoff spot? That's the only thing I see as a loss.
Case, that was my exact thought right from the start. And that's why I asked Corey in the chat, what is this team doing exactly, like, ever? And that's why I posted on our story, like, the same thing, because you know what? Jiricek was unhappy with his position in the organization. And although he didn't specifically request a trade, everyone kind of knew that he wanted out of there, and they made it happen. With all of that being said, though, like you alluded to, Case, they are a pretty good team now, exceeding expectations. It looks like things are going in the right direction. So why didn't they get a player that could help them now? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. This rebuild has gone on for a decade now. And yes, I know they keep picking good players, but eventually that has to turn into success from those young players on the ice. And they're kind of having a bit of a track record here of highly talented players not panning out. So Jiricek, I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. I think if you're the team in this situation, you pick the guy 6th overall. You just wait a little bit. Your hand's not forced. Like, you didn't have to make this trade. I get that the return was pretty good in terms of value, but at the end of the day, like, and you can say whatever you want about the value of those picks, and it depends on which team is picking. And by all accounts, Columbus has been pretty good at making some of those picks, especially early in the draft. But at the end of the day, it's still magic beans. You don't know what you're going to get with those picks. And Jiricek, you kind of already know you get a big, talented young defenseman who can jump into your lineup, maybe not as soon as expected, but will be a good defenseman down the road. So I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way. It just made me question everybody in Columbus. And I've been on record saying that I don't like what they've done over the past, however many years. So it was another trade to add to that.
I think the history with Ryan Murray has them a little bit of cold feet, or like a little concern in Columbus, because this seems like eerily similar.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like they've just had a bunch of situations where, you either rush a guy into the lineup and he doesn't produce, and then you've created a bit of a situation for yourself, or who knows? There's just, for me, you look at this player, he's young, he's talented, he's big, he has all the tools. In his draft year, leading up to that draft, we were saying that, this kid could be special, watching him at the World Juniors and stuff. So it just seems like, I don't know, too early for me. And if you look at the other players in his draft class, I was just looking at it, that was the Slavkovsky draft. And, you've got Slav, you've got Nemec, you've got Cooley, you've got Wright, and you've got Gauthier. Those are the only 5 guys picked ahead of him. And those are all probably going to be good players, but not a single one of them is absolutely lighting it up right now. So players take time, especially the players who had a year or two of their development curve screwed up by COVID. I think I made this point a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Jiricek being in rumors for trades in the first place. So I don't know. I just think this was way too soon for Columbus, and I just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the return that Columbus received from Minnesota, because all the talk was that, they would be looking for sort of a high-end prospect, a project, if you will, that they could get in return for Jiricek. So it was interesting to see this return. But regardless, with all of that being said, Jiricek is now out of Columbus and a member of the Minnesota Wild. All right, moving on to the second trade that we saw over the weekend for item number 2, guys. An interesting goalie swap here between the Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators. We know that Colorado desperately needs help between the pipes. But I got to tell you, I was a little surprised by this one, as the Avs sent Justus Annunen, a young goaltender, and a 6th-round pick to the Predators for Scott Wedgwood. Let's talk about this deal.
Well, Scott Wedgwood's kind of been that guy in the past that you can shoehorn into, a tandem, and he gets wins. He gets results. He's not flashy. He's not going to absolutely turn the tables for Colorado, but he's been a veteran backup goalie in this league, and I think they needed to make a change in net in Colorado. So totally fine with this deal on both sides.
Yeah, and listen, Wedgwood is a guy who gives you a bit of stability. You mentioned Case being, a veteran, a journeyman. He has sort of that presence that might calm a net down, even though he's never been a true number 1, which, Colorado might still have had hopes that Annunen could be a number 1, but they need help right now. And they're really hoping that Wedgwood is able to step into that role and, be good. And so, you looking back at Scott Wedgwood's career, he was pretty good in Dallas when he got there. It hasn't gone great this season for him, but I think that's all Colorado is doing here. They're betting on just getting a veteran presence between the pipes and settling down that net, because they need to make the playoffs here still. And it's not going to be easy if they can't get saves night after night. So I like the trade from Colorado's perspective. Annunen, to me, is similar to a guy like Stuart Skinner, where I feel like the ceiling can be high, but he's just been so wildly inconsistent through his young career so far. So I don't know. It's a tale of 2 different ways to treat a player like this. You can either hold on to him and cross your fingers and hope he's your guy, like they've done with Stuart Skinner, or you can be proactive, make a trade, and get a guy to help your crease right now. And that's what Colorado did. And honestly, I like the move, but I'm also a Wedgwood guy. So
yeah, that's totally fair for sure. I could see Annunen being the better goaltender in the long run, but Colorado, they're looking to win now, as they should, and this is a deal for right now. So totally a fair assessment from the two of you. All right, a couple of more items here to finish off Core 4 stories. Let's talk about the New York Rangers. They were at the top of the headlines this week. Chris Drury fed up a little bit and, making it known that, they could be willing to really shake things up in New York with, moving out guys like Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba. The Rangers did get a win against the Montreal Canadiens over the weekend, but they had to score the game-winning goal with like less than 25 seconds left in that game. So just got by the Habs, and they've won once in their last 6 games. So let's talk about what's going on in New York with the Rangers.
I don't think that there is a Core 4 story that's made me more happy yet. Absolutely love to see the downfall of the New York Rangers, especially for guys like Kreider and Trouba, who have just been a thorn in my side for the last few years. So love to see it. Yeah, they've been struggling. I've been just keeping my eye on every score, every game of the Metro Division because it's so tight. And watching them lose is always good news for me. Same as when Carolina gets stomped by the Florida Panthers. You just love to see that. But yeah, they're struggling. They're pointing fingers at the veteran guys on this team, like the long-standing veteran players in New York. And I find that funny because that's a total flip from what we've been doing in the past with this team, where it's always finger pointing at the young guys and are they doing the right thing with the young players? Why aren't the young guys producing? You put Capo Caco on the first line and he's not producing. What's going on there? Well, the script is flipped here, and the old guys are getting absolutely shunned in New York.
Yeah, and from what I can tell, just from reading Instagram comments, really, is fans of this team are ready for the young guard to take over from the old guard. And all of these trade rumors are kind of aligning with what fans want here. They want this to be, Lafreniere's team and the other young guys. I mean, Will Cooley's been incredible this year. That's just another name, another young guy.
Picked him up in fantasy at the right time.
Yeah, there you go.
He's
so
been great.
And so, yeah, that's what it seems like. It seems like they're in this weird point right now where fans want to transition. Some of the older players haven't been producing. Like Kreider, does he have an assist yet this season? I think last time I looked, I've got it here. 9 goals, no assists in 20 games. So, like,
for the Cy Young.
Yeah, exactly. What an NHL 25 stat after one game, 9 goals and no assists. But yeah, so listen. My thing with the Rangers is I feel like it's necessary to ask this question as someone on the outside looking in. Is it too early right now to be panicking in New York? That's what it feels like for me. I know internally there's a lot of expectations on this team. They've won the President's Trophy recently. They've been to the Final Four twice in the last 3 years. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of expectations. Internally, this group wants to win. But I look at their record. They're still sitting in a wild card spot. They're on a bit of a skid. I get that. But putting it out in a memo that, your captain and Chris Kreider and basically every other veteran player is
your
available.
Captain and your real captain.
Yeah, well, exactly. And essentially saying like, yeah, these guys are up for grabs. Like, to me, that seems like an overreaction, a panic move from a management group that obviously expects a lot. But listen, it's November, right? Well, actually today it's December, but it's still very early in the season is my point. And it just seems like an overreaction to me.
100%. There's way too much, fear for a team that's built so well, and high-end star players, decent decor, and one of the best goalies in the league. You can't start panicking this early. They're like all players meeting away from turning this thing around and being a strong team again.
Yeah, they're one canceled U2 concert away from winning another President's Trophy. But also, like, and this is, classic me bringing it back to the Leafs, but this is a year that the Maple Leafs could win the Atlantic Division. Like, in terms of points percentage, they're sitting in first right now. And who are they lined up to play in the first round of the playoffs? The New York Rangers. And let me tell you, that does not make me any more confident in a first round than playing the Bruins, the Panthers, or the Lightning. Like, the New York Rangers are still a damn good team, even though they're on a skid right now. So let me just tell you, like, even though they're first in the wild card, they're still dangerous, and they shouldn't be shopping their best players.
No, totally agree. I think it is an overreaction. I feel like last year we were saying the same thing about the Rangers a little bit. Oh, like they're kind of on a skid right now. Don't know if they're going to be a playoff team, and then they turn it around. It's just a matter of time before they go on a big run and get this thing turned around in New York. So, all right, and our last item here for Core 4 Stories. Want to talk about a young player who is really struggling this season. He was hurt basically all of last year with an injury, and he's had his struggles with injuries and just has one goal in 24 games this season and a minus 20 rating. And that's Kirby Dach of the Montreal Canadiens, really having a tough time this year. This was a guy who was a third overall pick. Brought into to Montreal, and that looked like a good a bet at the time. But he's had his struggles with injuries and really struggling this season offensively. So let's talk about Kirby Dach and his struggles right now, and kind of what we see in terms of the future for him.
Yeah, it really seemed like someone had some foresight in Chicago with getting him the hell out of Dodge. It's just not worked out in Montreal's in particular this season. He stands out like noticeably bad on the ice at times when I watch Montreal games, even though he's been a great player in the past. He had a great rookie season. He, looked good before he got hurt in the World Juniors. Like, he's been good in the past, but there's been times I'm watching Canadiens games and I'm like, who was that? Like, what was that turnover? Like, and you look at the number and you're like, oh yeah. Yeah, right. So I don't know. I think he's still got a pretty high ceiling and he's a big, strong center, young. He'll figure it out eventually, and he's got the talent for it to come. But I don't know if it's getting pulled down with a last place team in the East or what it is. But something's got to change for him. Change of scenery, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, you'd be dealing from a position of weakness for sure if you're Montreal trying to trade this guy. Third overall pick just a few years ago, right? It seems like he's been in the league forever at this point, but we have to remember he's still a young kid. He's dealt with injuries for a long time. Seems like since he entered the league, he's been dealing with injuries that have kept him out, missed almost all of last season. Comes in this year, you expect him to be a bit of a new player on the ice, and he just hasn't been very good. So I think it's important to consider, all of those factors, and the fact too that I feel like I have to keep bringing it up. It's a kid who, during the most important formative years of his career and setting himself up for the future, he had to deal with COVID and wasn't able to play. So like, this is just a common theme among players drafted from, I want to say, like 2019 to even the present. Like, it's tough for kids in your most important, like, formative years playing hockey when you have to miss entire seasons because of COVID. So like, that 2020 to 2022 range really hurt a lot of players, and we're still seeing some guys recovering from that. But in terms of Dach, like, that's another thing too. Like, with Montreal, they made a lot of bets, right? Another bet was Newhook, and so far he's been pretty good. I think is safe to say, better than Dach, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, they were both bets. And, if you're Kirby Dach, maybe you have to realize that you're not going to be the offensive player that you were expected to be coming into the NHL. And you might have to adapt your game, use your body in a different way, become extremely good defensively. Who knows? Like, maybe he tops out as a third line center and he has to change his game a bit.
Just listening to you just reminded me of like a perfect example, perfect comparison is Gabe Vilardi. Like, very similar players, similar builds, injuries early in the career, struggles early in the career. Look at Gabe Vilardi now, and it's kind of just like a little bit of a change to the way he prepared for the NHL season, as well as the way he plays in the NHL, and it's paid off for him.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's a tale as old as time. The best players in the league, or the players who end up sticking in the league, are the ones who are able to adapt on the fly. And maybe that's what Kirby Dach has to do. Maybe he has to get really good at winning defensive zone faceoffs. Maybe that's one thing that he picks up and he becomes a specialist. Maybe it's penalty killing. Maybe it's whatever, right? Like, who knows? But you've got to change your game a little bit, because especially on a team like Montreal, where there's just so many young, talented offensive players, maybe there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, and Dach has to change his game a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, third overall pick in 2019. He's been around for a while now, but still just 23 years old. And to wrap up on Dach, we've seen reports that the Calgary Flames are looking to add a young right shot center. I would, if I were them, I'd be looking at a guy like Kirby Dach, potentially getting a young player who still could have a lot of upside and maybe looking for a change of scenery. He's also an Alberta guy too, so it was just something I thought of.
Yeah, again, if you're Montreal, though, you're dealing from a position of weakness, so it just, you'd have to be careful for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, there we go. That's Core 4 Stories for episode 223, and we'll move on now to the main meat and potatoes of the episode. No pun intended, with American Thanksgiving that just passed, of course. And
we interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully, because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there's never been a better time to get signed up, and we're here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping right away with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through the link in the description down below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use the link and support the boys. So one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. This podcast is also sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. If the tickets are green, for example, you better act quick and secure those things, because that's a good deal. But if the tickets are red, maybe wait a bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyway, here's the best part though. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BoysInTheBooth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BoysInTheBooth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Speaking of American Thanksgiving, that brings us to our annual stat from Elliot Friedman. 77% of teams in a playoff spot since the 05-06 season at American Thanksgiving have gone on to make the postseason. So we're just going to have a bit of a discussion about the current standings as they sit right now, where teams are, just on the outside looking in, and kind of talk about that. So, Case, maybe you can start us off, and who do you kind of want to kick this off with?
Yeah, just to add to the stat, last year there were 3 swaps, which is more than the typical season, but it is the 76%, and that's why we like to look at this stat every single year. Now, another peek behind the curtain, again, we don't know what the core four stories are. Harp brings them in. Chad and I have no clue what's coming. It's amazing how many times a like key piece of my rant and preparation is brought up in a core four story, and then I'm like, God. But I'm going to talk about the Colorado Avalanche. I think that this team will be in the playoffs despite not being in a playoff spot at American Thanksgiving. I know I went on a little bit of a rant about this team last episode when I brought up Rantanen as a player who's really taking advantage of his contract season. Well, yeah, I mentioned that they lack some serious depth, but the stars of this team are just too good to keep them out of the playoffs. And the goaltending, something has to give there. And maybe it is Wedgwood coming in and calming the crease. When you look at the stats, this team has allowed the 6th least high danger shots against in the league. They control the run of play on Corsi. They have the 4th highest expected goals percent share, yet they're leaking goals and getting beaten up on the PK where your best penalty killer is your goalie. This team, all things point to, if they get average goaltending, they will be a strong team again. And what is Scott Wedgwood if not the just poster child for like average goaltending in the league? He's just consistently that guy. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe take a little bit of pressure off Georgiev for a little bit of time for him to get his feet under him, and then they finally get Ross Colton come back from injury, something like that. A little bit of depth scoring outside of the top guys who are still popping off. This team is still scoring goals despite only having 5 guys producing. So I think it's a matter of time for Colorado to flip this around, and they'll take a playoff spot.
Yeah, I could absolutely 100% see that. Case, on the flip side of it, you have to say who you're taking out of the playoffs if Colorado gets in. That's the tricky part. You got to pick a team too. So I need to hear.
It's not tricky for me. I was going to pick this team as a team who will miss, who's in a spot, but I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, and that's the Calgary Flames. I think that horse is dead enough.
Yeah, that's fair. And on Calgary, like, what are we doing here, folks? Like, just, tank, get your high pick, turn this team around in 1 or 2 years. Like, come on, what are we doing here? Don't sell the farm, but tank, okay? Like, if a guy needs surgery, go get it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then just tank, okay? Get your high pick, turn it around, keep most of your core. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, Landon Dupont, projected first overall pick in 2027, is from Calgary.
Oh, yeah. The connection was a match made in heaven, Harp.
He is sick.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about that the other day, but yeah, we'll have to. I can't wait for that episode, honestly. Our draft episode is always one of the best. But
for sure.
Back to Colorado. Yeah, Case, like, this team is legit. They have missed so many man games this year and have been fine. Like, they've been able to scrounge together wins, which is, extremely admirable. All their big guys are having incredible years. Georgiev's been the 2nd worst goalie in the league in terms of goals saved above expected, which is, not surprising. We've been talking about it from day one. So I'm with you. Like, I really like the Wedgwood ad. I think they were dealing from a position of weakness in terms of making that deal, but they just needed a guy who could come in and settle the crease down. So once they get a bit healthier and they're able to add some scoring from the bottom 6 and get some saves, I think that combination alone will be enough for them to get into the playoffs. So they will be part of the 24 or 23%, whatever it is, of teams who were not in a spot on American Thanksgiving who find their way in. I'm totally behind you there.
Yeah, I am as well, even though you guys know that it was only a few weeks ago that I said that, the Calgary Flames would end up making the playoffs in our, hot takes episode that we did some time ago. But yeah, I mean, looking at this team, 3 names, okay? McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar. Those guys just will not be denied. They are too good. They are going to continue to drag this team into the fight every single night, just like they did really early on when they were just so thin and beaten up. Those guys are just too good, and they set the tone and lead the way. And you know what? Like, Georgiev, yes, it's been spotty, but over the last stretch of games, I do think he has improved. And getting a veteran guy like Wedgwood in there will help to push him a bit and give him some healthy competition. Because I think before it was very clear that Georgiev was the number one, and then if Annunen, who's a young goaltender with potential, if he can come in and give you a nice little run in a small sample size, great. But that's not really sustainable. You have to run with Georgiev, and you've got a veteran guy who has been pretty consistent over the last number of years here and can kind of push him a bit in a healthy way. So, yeah, not worried about the Avalanche at all.
Yeah, their biggest concern, goaltending, like that's going to regress back to the mean or progress to the mean, whatever way you want to say that. And then their other biggest concern is depth scoring, and that's maybe the easiest thing to add in the league. You can't. Yeah. It's tough to go out and add a good defender or a good goalie or top end scoring. Like, you got to shell out for all three of those things. But depth scoring, you can grab that.
Yeah, that's really true, Case. They could pick up, I don't know if I want to throw a name out there, but a guy who can get you 20 goals in a regular season, play in the bottom of your lineup.
Well, we've seen them make moves like that before. Like last year, they picked up Yakov Trenin and Brandon Duhaime, and those moves didn't really work out. But I've got a guy for you who's been scoring this year. Like, if Columbus falls out of it, maybe you go and pick up a guy like Matthew Olivier.
Yeah, sure. I mean, tough too.
Just a name. Yeah, so exactly.
That'd be a good playoff guy. But here's something I wanted to a number I wanted to read off to you guys, or I guess a stat, or I don't know how I want to phrase this, but there are 7 teams in the NHL right now: Washington, New Jersey, Winnipeg, Carolina, Florida, Vegas, and Tampa. Relating this to Colorado, what do those 7 teams have in common? Any guesses?
I don't know. Hits?
No guesses. Those are the only teams in the league right now who have scored more goals than Colorado. And Colorado, as we know, has missed so many man games this year. So even without all of their players, they are still scoring at an elite clip. The problem is their goals against. It's at 93, and that is not very good. Second worst in the league. So it's going to turn around for this team. They're not going to bleed goals like they have been to this point in the season. So, Case, I think that is the most obvious pick for sure. Like, Colorado is a legit playoff contender once they get healthy and some average goaltending.
Yeah,
absolutely. Chad, who did you want to bring into the discussion here?
Yeah, so I had a difficult time with this, especially because the team that I'm picking to fall out of playoff contention right now is the team that I picked to win their division, and that's the Boston Bruins. So I don't want to do this, but I'm going to have to. I'm going to say the Bruins could be a team who could fall out of the playoff picture and not make the playoffs, even though are currently holding a spot and held a spot at American Thanksgiving. I think the team to replace them, Harp, get excited for this one, could be the Buffalo Sabres. I really do. I like what they've been doing in Buffalo. I feel like they're playing differently this year. It doesn't feel like that culture of losing is sticking around. It feels like they're finally ready to turn the page. And with Boston, even though they still have most of their big guys, Pasta, Marchand, they brought in Lindholm and Zadorov, and they've still got Swayman between the pipes. It just doesn't feel like things are going to plan this year. It feels like the magic is sort of wearing off the Bruins here. And let me let you in on a little secret here. When we were predicting the Atlantic Division, okay, was I extremely confident that Boston was going to win it? No. Every year, though, I've picked the Maple Leafs to win it, and it's always a different team. So me and my weird magic juju here, I tried to throw a bit of a curse on the Bruins by picking them to win the division.
Oh, that's a wild thing to say out loud because that gets flipped pretty quick.
And listen, that's what I'm worried about right here by picking the Boston Bruins to be a team to fall out of the playoffs. But I just don't think they've been very good this season. And unless Jeremy Swayman turns into what he was previous years, I just don't have that much confidence in this team. It sounds like this core is, management is ready to give up because they've already changed the coach. And, I get they've been pretty hot since they changed the coach, not going to lie, but I just don't know if there's enough juice left in the tank. The team has a minus 16 goal differential. That's one big thing that I wanted to look at when we did this stat, because every year it seems like every team in the playoffs has a positive goal differential and every team outside of the playoffs has a negative one, except for last year. Remember, Washington made it and they had like a minus 40 goal differential or something. And it was like the biggest story ever because that never happens. But I just look at the way the Bruins are playing right now and how they've played all season, and I just don't know if they have enough. All of that being said, if they get in, I still wouldn't want to play them in the first round. But that's my pick. Bruins out, Sabres in.
Yeah, minus 16 goal differential. That is 2 better than the San Jose Sharks. That doesn't bode well for this team. I think Pasta has shown a little bit that he's human and that he needs someone to play with. Marchand hasn't shown up in a contract year. Lindholm's been average. And outside of the three of them, they have a serious lack of depth, just like we talked about with the Colorado Avalanche. They are 31st in the league for goals for per game. They have the worst power play in the league currently. Through 26 games, they only have 7 players in double digits for points.
It's not good.
Not good. Outside of the scoring, goaltending is hurting them, and which yet again proves that you can't pay goalies. The guy who's going to set the market is just absolutely tanking so far this year. And the combination of a lack of scoring and poor goaltending is showing up in the differential. And I think that this team will also miss the playoffs.
Yeah, 4th worst goal differential in the league right now. Only Nashville, Montreal, and Kyle Dubas's Pittsburgh Penguins are worse. And are any of those teams going to make the playoffs? No, not even close. So it's not looking good for the Bees here. But like I said, I shouldn't have done this. Really? Can I go back? I shouldn't have done this, guys. They're going to win the division now, aren't they?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Chad, I don't know what, you said Harp get excited. I think I'm more nervous than excited after that. I do like the take though. And yeah, if there's a team I'm looking at that could fall out of it here and take a step back, it's the Boston Bruins. Just what we've seen to this point this season, just the lack of consistency. Their big boys haven't been going the way that that we know they can. Pasta, yes, does look human after back-to-back 100-point seasons. And a guy who just looks slow to me and just is not giving them enough from the backside is Charlie McAvoy as well. Just have not seen enough from a guy who we've referred to over the last couple of years as one of the elite defenders in the National Hockey League, and he hasn't looked like one of those guys so far this season. Also, the goaltending, like you guys mentioned, I think that Swayman not having a training camp, coming in late, and just the distraction of all of that around the team really set them up for failure to start the season. And, Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, regardless of how you feel about them, they address that. And I think that's a big factor for sure. They're not scoring goals and in net, again, I'll go back to that. Surprisingly, Jonas Korpisalo has been the best out of the two. He's given them some very good starts between him and Swayman. Elias Lindholm, again, going back to the forward group, is not a first line center. He's better off, being in a support role, I think. And I think on a Stanley Cup contender, he's a third line center, so just so many things with the Bruins. Again, not as bad as Pittsburgh, even though they've kind of dragged themselves back into the fight a little bit here, winning 3 straight. But, they're trying to hang on as long as they can. And Elliot Friedman, I think, made a really great point about the Bruins, and something that has maybe caught up to them is losing powerful guys for that culture in Patrice Bergeron and Zdeno Chara. That has maybe caught up to them a little bit, because not to be too harsh on the Bruins, but I do think there's maybe a bit of a culture issue with this team and the group and management and everything. And this goes back to the firings of Bruce Cassidy and Jim Montgomery. What does this say about your organization and the group and everything? And so just a lot of factors contributing to the Bruins' up and down start here to this point.
Well, I'll tell you what it says, Harp. It says that they have extremely high expectations. So they're trying to do whatever they can to keep this group alive and winning games. And, over the past couple seasons, even without Chara, Bergeron, Krejci, they've put up record numbers. How insane was that? They lose Bergeron. They go on to put together the best regular season in history in terms of points. So, I don't think culture's the problem at all. I think they just have a bunch of guys who are either getting older or are not veteran enough, and they don't have the guys in the middle. I'm looking at their lineup now. You've got all of these players playing a regular role. You've got Morgan Geekie, Trent Frederick, John Beecher, Mark McLaughlin, Mark Kastelik. All of these guys are in your everyday lineup. I don't know. It just seems, and then your actual stars, you've got Pasternak and Marchand. Marchand is like a 50, 60 point guy now.
Yeah.
There's just not enough up front. They thought Lindholm was going to be better down the middle with Zacha and Charlie Coyle. To me, it's just not enough. The back end looks pretty good, honestly, even though they're missing Hampus Lindholm. I still like that back end. I think Zadorov has, he's been run out of town before he's even had a chance to unpack, it seems. But he's been, apparently not very good this season. But I think he's a solid defenseman, but he's not Chara. So it's you just don't have those guys anymore. And the team, even though they have extremely high expectations and there's a culture of winning there, I just don't think it's enough. And listen, all of this will be meaningless when they do make the playoffs or win the division or beat the Leafs in the first round again. But I'm looking at this from a rational perspective here. I'm looking at what they have on paper, how they've performed this season. And I just think the safe bet, if I have to pick one team to fall out in the East, it's got to be the Boston Bruins. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about going and putting $5 on them winning the cup right now because of this conversation. But
Yeah. Your life savings,
bet,
maybe.
yeah.
Oh, geez. All right, fellas. Well, I want to talk about one team in particular, and then I do have an honorable mention that I'll go over quickly. But I just want to say I was right and you guys were wrong about the Washington Capitals.
What does this have to do with this segment at all? They're in first in the league.
No, I know.
I almost picked them to fall out, by the way.
I wanted to point that out. I don't think that they're going to finish first in the Metro. I think they will be in that 2 or 3 spot behind Carolina or New Jersey, but I just wanted to say I was right about the Capitals.
I don't know how you've made me hate the Washington Capitals so much, but every time I see them win, I go, but I still don't know why they're good, but they're
Same.
good.
I almost picked them, Harp, as a team to miss the playoffs. Listen, they're winning games, but they're scoring a hell of a lot of goals right now.
Yeah.
And that is not going to last forever. So
you don't think so?
No, of course. What do you mean? Of course not. Of course that's not going to. You've got Connor McMichael at 2 points a game. Of course that's not going to last forever. You've got 65-year-old Ovi blasting it from the spot. He's going to score 100 this year when he gets back and healthy. No, it's not going to last forever. So there will be some regression with that team, I think. but I couldn't pick them to miss. Like that was pushing it too far.
No,
but don't collect your
not.
cookies yet until we see where they finish at the end of the year. That's
all
what I'll
right.
say.
Fair enough. But anyway, wanted to just poke you guys a little bit with that one. But I'll bring up a team that is currently in a wild card spot right now, and I saw them a couple of weeks ago in Ottawa, and they've just turned it around after a disastrous 8-10 games out of the gate, and that's the Philadelphia Flyers, sitting in that second wild card spot in the East. They've won 3 in a row, 7-2-1 in their last 10. But do you guys not get the feeling that it's going to be the same as last year, which is the worst possible thing for this franchise to again be stuck in that murky middle? Like, okay, great, like you're playing meaningful games and down the stretch, and you're in it right until the bitter end. But that's not what this team needs. They're supposed to be rebuilding. And again, like, John Tortorella is a hell of a coach, but I just don't think he is the right guy for this team, given the stage that they're in. Like, they're not supposed to be doing this. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch Michkov and Konechny and all these guys producing every single night. But do you guys just not get the sense it's going to be the same as last year? Like, they're just going to be in the hunt, like, for the rest of the year here, and then come up short, get another mid first round pick, although that Jet Luchenko looks like a pretty good one. Man, can that kid fly, and made the Flyers, at the start of the season. But it's not what this team needs. Again, I will beat this horse all day long. That is not what this team needs. They need another high pick to continue building themselves back up for long-term sustainable success under Danny Briere. So that's my thought on the Philadelphia Flyers, who are currently in a wild card spot right now. Again, it's fun to watch, but in the overall big picture of the Flyers, it's not good for them.
Well, go ahead, Case, if you are.
Just a quick, they're the most statistically average team in the entire league. Because I looked at them as well, just briefly, and kind of looked in to see if there's anything that really stood out to me. And I was like, wow, this team is statistically average. And it's impressive that they're in a wild card spot with 43% of the goal shares in their hockey games. I don't know how they're doing it. Are they getting absolutely blown out in their losses? Is that what's happening? I don't know. But this team, otherwise, at every other stat, is just incredibly average. And I think that points to them coming down a bit over this season and missing the playoffs eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, in terms of points percentage, they're sitting outside of that wild card spot right now, too. So it's like they're kind of already out. That being said, they do have a higher points percentage than a team like the Sabres, who I picked to make the playoffs. But it's just, listen, what I was going to say is, thank God Michkov dropped on their laps and only wanted to play in Philadelphia for some reason. Because, like, first of all, we never talked about that. Like, what the hell happened there? Like, why did he only want to play in Philadelphia? That was the weirdest situation. Story for another day, I guess. But he's been incredible this year. I saw he got his third OT winner the other night, kind of like when Cole Caulfield came into the league and was only scoring at 3-on-3 and just torching the league at 3-on-3. And, we make comments, oh, Caulfield's too small. He can only score when, he has a ton of time and space. And, they were kind of tongue in cheek at the time, but he's proven us wrong. He's had an incredible year this year in Montreal. But Michkov, man, like, he has been so good this year, and he fell on their laps. Probably should have went second overall.
Is Eric Lindros his agent or something?
I don't know, man. Like, there's something going on there, but he's just been incredible. And even though he was like, what did he go overall? Was he like seventh or
7?
Yeah. So he was seventh, like, but he's a second overall, or even really he's a first overall talent. So that's really, important for them.
Outside of that draft, before people don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you. Right. Outside of that draft, if he goes in the 2022 draft, he goes first overall, not Slavkovsky, you know,
Yeah,
like just,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that, thank you, Case, before I get flamed
Well,
on
there's someone loading the gun while
yeah,
you're saying that.
that was the
yeah.
point I needed to make. But another thing is Travis Konechny. I know. So today we're recording. It's the 1st of December. The deadline to pick the Four Nations face-off team is tomorrow, the 2nd, when you'll hear this episode. We'll find out on the 3rd, probably, if Travis Konechny made Team Canada. But man, he's having a great year.
Oh yeah.
He plays with an edge. He kind of does everything. He kills penalties. Like, is he not the perfect Team Canada guy, like to play down the lineup as just an energy, like a water bug there? Like, he's had a great season. And even though I think Philly is probably going to miss the playoffs and it'll be the same old song and dance, like, there are definitely some bright spots now. And Konechny is one of them for sure.
He is the perfect type of guy that they pick for the 4th line on Team Canada. But something that worries me is international play and rules in officiating and the way he plays the game. Like, either that's going to result in him getting penalties or it's going to result in the other teams getting a lot of penalties. So yeah, double-edged sword there.
True. That is very true.
Yeah, that's fair. And just going back to Michkov for a second, like, you guys know, I a couple of weeks ago went to Ottawa to see Sens Flyers, and Michkov got the OT winner that night, and the Flyers beat the Senators when they didn't really deserve to win, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, like, was all excited to see Michkov, and I'm like, oh geez, I haven't really noticed him tonight, and then boom, gets the game winner in OT, like, as if. But that guy, again, just going back to him, like, he plays, he plays with an edge. Like, he's a hard worker and makes plays and just competes. Like, him and Konechny, like, they're Flyers. Like, those guys just compete hard every single night.
Yeah, and he's built like a UPS truck. Like, he's just like, he's wide, he's stocky, he's thick, but he's explosive and he's incredibly talented. His hands are amazing. Like,
you guys haven't mentioned the guy who was bred in a lab to play for the Philadelphia Flyers, and Owen Tippett. Isn't that like?
Yeah, that's another one too.
Another guy who plays with an edge and can score and is ginger. It's like, that's what they've had in Philadelphia in the past. So,
guys, are we Flyers fans? Is this what we're doing here? Like,
yeah,
John, you know what?
It's the most positive I've ever said about the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah. Reverse your pick. They're making the playoffs now. We're getting behind them here.
I know. We're kind of contradicting ourselves. John Marshall, I hope you're listening to this, because he's a big Flyers fan, of course. So, oh, geez.
Yeah, they finally have like a pretty good group, honestly.
Yeah.
At least on the forward group, like, they've got a lot of solid pieces up front. So
on the back end too, I will say, and again, I'm contradicting myself here, but we ripped the contract at the time, but Travis Sanheim has been excellent for this team as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, fair enough.
Geez, look at us here, just stroking off the Flyers. Who would have thought?
Big Flyers fans over here.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, so we're at the end of this episode now where we're picking teams not currently in a playoff spot who we think will make the playoffs or have a chance to make the playoffs. Looks like we lost Harp for a sec, but he's back. And I just want to mention that none of us picked the Ottawa Senators. We're getting close to I told you so territory, boys, and I just can't wait. I just can't wait to get there. And all the Sens fans are praying for my downfall as we speak.
I don't know. They've got the talent. It can happen. We'll see.
They could.
They're a dark horse.
They could, for sure. I can't stand the fan base. That's all.
As a Leafs fan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously. Harp, are you back? Are we good? Do I need to bring the show home, or can you? Yeah, he's having trouble here. But okay, well, I'll close it out here. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the podcast, and we'll talk to you next week, hopefully when Harper is back with us on planet Earth.
Nice wrap, Chad. I'm back. Thank you.